What if the moment you felt like giving up was when God spoke through a stranger? Daniel stood on a quiet bridge in Nairobi, staring at the river below. His hands gripped the railing, his heart heavy with failure. "I'm done," he whispered. But then, a voice broke through the silence, and everything changed. Daniel Mwangi was 32, a mechanic with a quick laugh and a love for fixing things. He grew up in a small Nairobi neighborhood, where his church was like family. Every Sunday, he'd play the guitar for the youth choir, his fingers dancing over the strings, his faith strong. His tiny workshop was filled with tools and the smell of oil, a place where he turned broken cars into working dreams. He believed God had a purpose for him, and he poured his heart into his work. But life can hit hard. One hot morning, Daniel arrived at his workshop to find a notice taped to the door: "Rent due, pay or leave." Business had been slow for months. People were buying new cars, not fixing old ones. Daniel's savings were gone, and he owed money to suppliers. He'd promised his wife, Esther, and their 2 kids, Joy and Peter, a better life. Now, he couldn't even pay for their school fees. At home, Daniel sat at their small kitchen table, his head in his hands. Esther, always calm, touched his shoulder. "Daniel, we'll get through this," she said softly. "God has a plan." "I don't see it, Esther," Daniel said, his voice low. "I'm letting you all down." "Pray," she said. "God's listening." That night, Daniel knelt by his bed, his old Bible open to Psalm 34 verse 18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." He tried to pray, but the words felt empty. Doubt crept in, cold and heavy. Was God really there? Weeks passed, and things got worse. Daniel begged for jobs, but customers were few. He sold his tools to buy food, each sale like losing a piece of himself. A final notice came: "Leave the workshop in 30 days." He stopped going to church, too ashamed to face his friends. He'd been the one fixing their cars, playing music, lifting their spirits. Now, he felt like a failure. One evening, cleaning out his workshop, Daniel found an old guitar pick in a drawer. It was from his youth choir days, when he'd written a note in his Bible: "Let God lead you," Isaiah 40 verse 31. Tears stung his eyes. "I want to, God," he said, "but I don't know how." To clear his mind, Daniel started helping at a community center, fixing bikes for kids. There, he met Grace, a woman in her 60s with a warm smile. She ran the center, always humming a hymn as she worked. "You look like you're carrying a heavy load, Daniel," Grace said one day, handing him a cup of tea. "It feels like everything's falling apart," he said, staring at the ground. "I don't know if God cares anymore." Grace's eyes twinkled. "God's voice is in the people around you. Listen closely." Her words stuck with him, but the pain grew. Daniel walked the streets of Nairobi, passing his church, its music drifting out. He wanted to go in but felt too small. His workshop was nearly empty, his dreams fading. Esther's encouragement felt far away, and his kids' smiles couldn't hide their hunger. One quiet night, Daniel stood on a bridge over the Nairobi River. The water sparkled under the moonlight, but his heart was dark. He gripped the railing, thinking of his family, his failures. "I'm done, God," he whispered, his voice breaking. He wasn't sure what he'd do next, but he felt ready to give up. Then, a voice called out, "Young man, you okay?" It was Grace, walking home from the community center, her bag slung over her shoulder. Daniel froze, wiping his eyes. I'm fine," he lied. Grace stepped closer, her face kind but firm. "You don't look fine. Come with me. Let's talk." Daniel hesitated, then followed her to a small bench nearby. "I've lost my business, my hope," he said, his voice shaking. "I can't provide for my family." Grace listened, then said, "God hasn't left you, Daniel. He's speaking through people like me, like your wife, your church. You're not alone. She reached into her bag and pulled out a flyer. There's a mechanic job at a garage across town. I know the owner. He needs someone like you. She smiled. And our church could use a guitarist again. Daniel's heart stirred. He took the flyer, his hands trembling. It felt like a small light in the dark. The next day, he went to the garage, his old portfolio of repair jobs in hand. He prayed with every step. The owner, a quiet man named Paul, saw Daniel's skill and hired him on the spot. It wasn't his own workshop, but it was a start. Daniel went back to church that Sunday, his guitar in hand. The youth choir welcomed him with hugs, their voices lifting his spirit. He played "Great is Thy Faithfulness," his fingers remembering every note. Esther and the kids sat in the front row, their smiles brighter than ever. Months later, Daniel was saving money from his new job. He and Esther started a small repair side business, fixing bikes for the community center. He wasn't rich, but he was rebuilding. He knew now that God had been there, in Grace's words, in Esther's love, in the church's open arms. The bridge wasn't the end, it was a turning point. Moral lesson. When life feels too heavy, don't give up. God's love speaks through the people around you. You are never alone. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40 verse 31. Subscribe for more stories of faith and hope. Share in the comments. How has God spoken to you through others?